Okay, I can't hold this back anymore. The most important aspect of photography when it comes down to photographing people is not what a lot of people think. And that's what we're going to discuss today. You're listening to the Master Your Lens podcast, episode 189.
Hey, John Lee Dumas here, the founder and host of EO Fire, and welcome to the Master Your Lens podcast, the photography podcast dedicated to sharing inspiring stories, technical tips, and powerful secrets to help you become a better photographer. And now, your host, Matthew Jordan Smith.
Hello, Photography Nation. Here we are, Wednesday. Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021. This is absolutely an historic day. By the end of today, history will be made. And here we are, living through it. Maybe you're glued to the TV. Maybe you're tuning out. The only thing that will remain from today are the images, the videos, and the photographs. Today, we're going to focus on what makes a photograph special. What makes photography special? When it comes down to photography, there's a lot of information out there. You can go to YouTube and find a sea of information. There's great info, as a matter of fact. But it all seems to be wrapped around the tangible, the camera, the lenses, the lights. And while these things are very important, there's another aspect of photography that, for the most part, seems to get overlooked. Recently, I was talking to a friend, and we were having a discussion. And it made me think back to my days as a photo assistant. I've been a working photographer for over 30 years now. But before that, my training was working as a photo assistant in New York City. As a photo assistant, you work for not only one photographer, but several photographers. And over my course of being an assistant, I worked for around 20 photographers over the course of 3 years. Those photo assignments were wrapped around every aspect you can think of in terms of photography. Photographing people, photographing landscapes, photographing still life, going on location, working in studio, you name it. I did that in terms of being a photo assistant. And I really got to learn a lot. And to be a photo assistant, you must know the basics. And what's the basics of photography? Of course, knowing your cameras, knowing your gear in every aspect. Cameras, lenses, lights, and a whole lot more. That's the beginning stage. And as you continue to work, you learn all this stuff even better. You learn to master lighting. You learn to work with all types of gear, all types of cameras, all types of lenses, and use all this equipment in many different situations. But then you get past that. You see different photographers working with the same gear. And I must admit, in the very beginning of being a photo assistant, I was wrapped up in the gear because people want to know, what gear do you know? How comfortable are you being on a photo shoot? Whether that shoot's in studio or on location, and the location could be anything from being in an office of a CEO to being on a beach in Bora Bora. Working as a photo assistant teaches you everything. A lot of people might think it's all about the gear. I know that camera, I know this lens, I know this light. Again, all that's all well and good. It's very important to have that foundation. As a matter of fact, you need that foundation. But it is just that, the foundation. And like building anything, once you have the foundation, you can build upon that. All of this is the tangible aspects of photography. And I get how we can get wrapped up in all of this. However, there is another aspect that is even more important when it comes to photographing people. My entire career has been about that, photographing people. And the one thing I learned as an assistant that I think is uber important and that most people do not talk about or even think about is the part beyond the gear. I want to tell you a story. Years ago, I worked for one brilliant photographer, and he had 3 assistants. I was one of them. When I worked for that photographer, I was new to being a photo assistant, and I was the 3rd assistant, which just means I was the lowest person on the totem pole. I watched the 1st assistant. I was a young photographer, new to the industry, and I will admit, I looked up to the 1st assistant because he was Mr. Tech. If there was a problem with any gear, camera, lights, lenses, you name it, this guy was the go-to guy to fix it. He was always on top of every new lens, every new camera, every new part of technology that came out. That was him. Years later, as all the assistants that I knew started breaking out and becoming photographers, I watched this one assistant who I thought was brilliant, and he was, but he never became a photographer. He had amazing work. I saw his portfolio. In terms of lighting, nobody could touch him. Everyone wanted to hire this assistant. Annie Leibovitz was one of those photographers who tried to get this assistant. But another big photographer had his time. He was the in-demand photo assistant. He was the guy that every photographer wanted to have on their set because he was Mr. Technical. If this person was so amazing as a photographer, technically, why wasn't he working? Now, this is over 30 years ago, but this guy is still Mr. Technical. A few years ago, I ran back into him in New York. He was not working in the photo industry anymore. He was in tech, working for Apple. I wasn't surprised to hear that when I talked to him because he was always Mr. Tech. Today, as you look around YouTube looking for information, you find a lot of information about the tech. The best lights, the best cameras, the best lenses. But the most important aspect of photography is often left out. And I get why it's left out, because it's the intangible part. But I feel it's the most important part. What is it? It's you. How you bring your energy into a shoot and direct the shoot. How you create the mood. How you interact with your subjects. How you pull out their energy when you are photographing that person or those people. What makes somebody hire you over and over and over again? The most important aspect of your photography is you pulling something out of your subject, making a connection. This is very hard to teach, and maybe that's why people are not teaching it. If you want to have an amazing career as a photographer, if you want to make pictures that make people feel special, it's the connection part. You know what that feels like. People are going to enter your space and they're going to feel one way or the other. They're going to connect with you and feel comfortable, or they're not. And that will show in the photographs. You can have the best camera available, whatever camera that is, the best lenses available, the latest, greatest, all the bells and whistles, but if you don't connect with your subjects in a way where people feel, okay, this is real, you may have a hard time getting work. I want to change that today so that you know what's the most important aspect of your photography when it comes to photographing people. If you know me, you know I love to share the joy of photography, and I teach when I can. I am a lover of light. I love beautiful light. I love teaching other people about light and the other aspects of photography. But I would be doing you a disservice if I did not tell you what I feel is the most important part, because I've seen it for over 30 years. So this is not some hypothesis. This is not some idea. This is me looking at 30 years of working in the field and seeing people who are really good at photography in terms of their lighting and the tech, who miss the most important part and suffer. The magic of being a photographer is connecting with your subjects. And you do that in different ways. You do that in how you make the room feel. If you're photographing people and people are coming into your space, maybe you rent a studio or you have a studio, or you take pictures on location of people. Maybe you're doing weddings. It doesn't really matter. If you're photographing people in any way, you are in charge of how they feel when they enter your space. I want to say that again. You are in charge of the energy when they enter your space, wherever that space is. You need to set the tone in the room, set the stage. If you're photographing someone tomorrow and they walk in and they're stressed about all the news they've been hearing, they come into your space and that shows on their face. It's taken over their energy. What can you do to change all of that? I use a lot of different tools to do that. One, a very powerful one, is music. And that starts when they enter into the space. What do they hear? And how does that affect them? You'll see it on their face. Also, what are the other elements that make people feel good? Think about it. Having food is a big part of it. What type of snacks do you have around? What type of drinks do you have around? Food has a big impact on how you feel. Sometimes it's just a feel-good snack. Let's say you don't have anything to eat or drink, and they walk into your space and they're just a little bit hungry. They'll never tell you that, but in their mind, they can't wait to leave and grab something to eat. And that shows on their face. And maybe you're wondering, what does that have to do with photography? Everything. Your job is to make people look good. But to do that, you've got to make them feel good first. You find out how you make people feel good. Put as much energy into that as you put into buying your gear, learning about lighting, learning about posing, or whatever. This is even more important. Yes, you heard me right. It's more important. And here's why I say that. I'll go back 30 years again, working with all these photographers. I worked for photographers who were very technical, didn't spend time making a connection, didn't really care about people, and that shows in the work. Then I worked for other photographers who weren't so technical, not very technical at all. However, those same photographers who didn't really know a lot technically were working left and right. And as the photo assistant, I got to hear all the side conversations that happened. I listened to people talk about photographers and how much they loved working with a certain photographer. It was never about them talking about their technical ability. It was always about connection. What made them pick one over the other? Was it fun to be on a trip with this one photographer versus being around somebody else who is probably not as much fun, but takes beautiful pictures technically, and the pictures feel a little boring or stiff? Guess who gets the job? And not just that one job, but job after job after job. The person who has that connection in the pictures. When people look at your work outside of the photo world, because it's not photographers who are hiring you. It's real people. When real people look at your work, they're not saying, oh, wow, that's a great lens in that picture. That's a great camera. That's a wonderful light. They're not thinking about that. Do they connect with the image? The connection part is way past the tangible part that we see. It's the intangible. Now, yes, I'm a photographer. I get caught up in all the gear as well. I love it. I want to have the latest, greatest all the time because that is your foundation. It does help. But getting past that is the most important part of your photography journey. You connecting with your subject, making them feel special. And the better you do that, the better your pictures will be, the more you'll work, and the happier you'll be. Earlier, I told you I was having a discussion with a friend about what makes a picture special. And this person was hooked on one aspect of photography, just the technical, but missing the whole point about what's really important. While I agree, you do need to learn about the tech. That's your foundation. But it's just that, your foundation, and then you build upon that. Once you have your foundation, you build your career on connection. If you want to be very successful as a photographer, don't just spend your entire career working on your foundation. Imagine building a building where that's all you do. Doesn't really go anywhere. You need to build beyond the foundation. That's when things really take off. So yes, work on your foundation. Work on your gear, getting the best gear you can find. But then spend just as much time, if not more, working on how you make people feel comfortable in your space, how you connect with your people. Throughout my career, I've done several different things to make that connection. Sometimes sending flowers to clients. Sometimes sending a card to clients before a photo shoot. Sometimes sending flowers before the photo shoot. So when they walk into your space, they feel a certain way before they even get there. Maybe you making that connection is just how you interact with them on social media before the shoot. Maybe before the shoot, you're giving them tons of compliments through text messages before they get there. That does affect them before they get into your space. Now let's go deeper into once they're in front of your camera. Let's say you've done all the things I've mentioned. You have great music and you can feel that they are connecting with that music. That's one thing. Oh, and before I go on, let me go back to that for a second. Let me hammer home on the music aspect. Maybe they walk in and they're not reacting to the music. You can feel that. That's the point when you change the music. I had this happen recently. My client walked in, they're doing their hair and makeup, and I'm paying attention during hair and makeup to find out how they're feeling. And I could sense that something wasn't right. So I had my assistant ask, "What's your favorite music? What would you like to hear?" And that was it. Found out what she wanted to hear, changed the music, and she changed. You cannot take this part for granted. I've watched people who do take it for granted and suffer the consequences. Music makes people feel comfortable, makes them feel at home. So find the music that they like. The music may be music that you don't enjoy. But on your photo shoot, it's not really about you. It's about your subject. Your job is to pull something out of them. So be aware of all of that. Also be aware of all of the energy in your room as you're shooting. Maybe your room is a studio. Maybe it's an apartment. Maybe it's your client's home. Do everything you can to make them feel comfortable. Music definitely helps. Now let's go to the set when you were actually photographing your client. They're now sitting in front of your camera. This is a very important part. You should not be thinking about your lighting, your camera, your gear at this point. You've done all your training. You've done your foundation. Now it's time for you to focus on your subject and pulling something out of them. So all of your energy, all of your focus needs to be on them, being in tune with how they're feeling. They're not going to say it, but they are going to show it. And you need to be cognizant of this. So give them compliments. Read their body language. Notice their eyes and if they're staying focused on you or if they're looking around the room at other things or other people. This is the most important aspect of your photo shoot when you are working with people. Making that connection, making them feel comfortable, and then pulling that out. They say in the future, robots will take over doing a lot of different jobs. If you're focused on just the tech, a robot can do that. But what a robot will never be able to do is connect with people. That's your part. What if in the future, technology advances to the point where we don't have to guess about any of the tech, the camera, the gear in any way, the lights? What if that part is taken out of the equation? The most important part of you being a photographer and having a thriving business is you making a connection. I know I haven't seen anything about that on YouTube ever, but it's the most important part. You can't skip it. Now, if you're doing this as a hobby and you just want to feel good about photography, it's okay to stay in the foundation part. But if you want to go to that next level, you must leave past your foundation and really work on connecting with your clients, with your subjects. If you want to create pictures that make people feel special, that's when you get to work on making that connection. I know this will not resonate with everybody. It's not supposed to. But for those who get it, don't forget this. It's the difference between you thriving as a photographer or just getting by. Okay, that's my spiel for today. If you want to go deeper into this year, come and join me on Photography Lighting Ninjas, the free Facebook page. We are about to do something very special this year. So come and join us on Photography Lighting Ninjas. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, everyone, stay safe. Always dream big. Bye for now.